Part 14. She Always Loves to Sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 132. Chapter 132, There Won't Really Be a Fight, Right? In the Box. Bai Yuxiu looked carefully at Chi Saijin, who had changed tremendously over the years, and clicked his tongue. Ajin, did you receive any stimulation abroad? Why did you suddenly become non-mainstream? Look at the light golden color on this head and the 3 piercings on the ears. With these exquisite facial features, snow-white complexion, and burning lips. It was almost like an angel had descended. To be honest, if you intend to debut, I will definitely make you the most popular star. Lu Qingran snorted from the side. Old Bai, have you suffered from occupational diseases again? Have you forgotten that he said at the beginning that even if he lives on the street, he will never go to the entertainment industry? This is true. When Chi Saijin was 17 years old, when he was going out with some friends who owned an entertainment company, he stopped by a nearby film crew to visit a class. The director of the crew put them in the hotel where the crew stayed as a courtesy. As a result, that night, an actress wearing a thin dress with only a few pieces of fabric knocked on his door. It made him sick. Since then, he has felt a sense of resistance to the entertainment industry. Bai Yuxiu sighed twice and said, "What a pity you have such a face." Chi Saijin picked up a glass of wine, took a sip, and said, "Come on, third uncle's face is suitable for his debut. Why don't you try to persuade him?" Bai Yuxiu quickly waved his hand and said, "If third brother makes his debut, he will really be underestimating his talents. The entertainment industry cannot support this giant Buddha. If Mr. Chi Sanyi goes to the entertainment industry to become a star, then other stars will have no way to survive." Chi Jinkai took a sip of red wine and ignored their words. Lu Qingran looked at the door of the box, frowned, and said, "Why isn't Wai Wei coming back? Have been walking for more than 10 minutes. What's going to happen?" Hearing this, Bai Yuxiu also frowned, then relaxed his brows and said, "I probably drank too much and I'm going to vomit for a while. Just now Chi Mao Yi was extremely drunk." Had they not known that Li Ju and Bai Muo were in the bathroom, they would have been worried about her going out alone. Chi Saijin's brows moved slightly, and he suddenly said, "I just heard Wai Wei mumbling something about stopping Mu Yu and Ajiu from fighting. Don't think something really happened." After saying this, the other 3 frowned. "All screwed up?" Bai Yuxiu asked, "Why did Xiao fight with my sister-in-law?" Lu Qingran slapped her thigh suddenly, with a shocked expression, and said, "Damn it! Didn't Mu Yu say that she likes third brother before? Could it be that my sister-in-law regards her as a love rival?" Bai Yuxiu's eyes fell on Chi Jinkai, who looked indifferent almost instantly, and he gritted his teeth. When Lu Qingran mentioned this, he also remembered that unpleasant memory. His sister actually told him that she liked Chi Jinkai on his birthday. When he heard it, his vision went dark and his head felt dizzy. Although the third brother is very good, his indifferent character is really not suitable for her. For this reason, he was worried that one day his sister would be seduced by Chi Jinkai without him paying attention. Thinking of this, Bai Yuxiu's eyes were filled with resentment. "Third brother, how can you seduce Xiao when the rabbit doesn't even eat the grass beside its nest?" Chi Jinkai denied, "I didn't seduce her." Lu Qingran, "Lao Bai, you don't understand. According to the charm of third brother, even just standing there is enough to make girls scream. It's not surprising that Xiao likes third brother." Bai Yuxiu. "There is a sad feeling. But..." Lu Qingran's expression suddenly changed. "My sister-in-law has a bad temper, and Mu Yu also has a straight temper. Could it be that the 2 of them really..." The next words were not finished yet, but everyone present understood the meaning of his words. Chi Jinkai frowned lightly, his thin lips pursed into a straight line unconsciously, and his eyes swept across the door of the box, with unknown emotions hidden in his eyes. "The remaining 3 people looked at me and I looked at you, all with the same expression on their faces. The next second, Lu Qingran said Bai Yuxiu and Qi Sijin stood up at the same time, wanting to rush out of the box and go to the bathroom to see what was going on. However, as soon as he stood up, the door of the box was suddenly kicked open. Then, they watched helplessly as the two people they were worried about getting into a fight just now helped Chi Mao Yi walk in together. The third update is here. Please accept. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfei. Chapter 133. Chapter 133. Time can always smooth everything out. Li Ju and Baimuo helped Chi Mao Yi to her seat. The smell of alcohol instantly filled the entire box. Qi Sijin, who was sitting next to Chi Mao Yi, frowned and asked, "Why did she drink so much? I didn't pay attention just now, but she ended up drinking like this." Li Ju pressed down Chi Mao Yi's waving hand, sat down next to her, and said, "She had a brain convulsion today." Knowing that he is not a good drinker, he is still so unscrupulous. Chi Mao Yi, who was already drunk and unconscious. "I was so panicked, how could I pay attention to how much I drank?" Qi Jinkai glanced at Chi Mao Yi, who was talking drunkenly and kept throwing herself at Li Ju. He stood up, took the coat on the side with his long arm, and said to Li Ju, "It's getting late, I'll take you back, otherwise Mr. Li, okay worried." Li Ju raised her wrist and looked at the time. It was getting late. Then she frowned again and said, "But she." She pointed at Chi Mao Yi, feeling helpless. "You can't just leave her here, right?" Qi Jinkai looked past her and landed on Qi Sijin, and said indifferently, "You will take her back to the old house later." Qi Sijin's mouth twitched, his eyes wandered between him and Li Ju for a while, and he suddenly realized. "I understand, the third uncle wants to see Li Ju off alone." So he nodded and said, "Okay, third uncle, I understand." Qi Jinkai nodded, hummed, and then left with Li Ju. Qi Sijin shrugged, bent down resignedly, picked up Chi Mao Yi by the waist, signaled to the remaining three people, and then left. Seeing that the four people were gone, the box instantly became quiet. Bai Yuxiu suddenly said, "Xiao, you and your sister-in-law didn't have any disputes, right?" Bai Muo raised his head and looked at Bai Yuxiu in confusion. "Of course not, brother, why do you ask that?" "That's not because you said before that you liked third brother." Lu Qingran also came over and asked curiously, "Xiao, you didn't fight with my sister-in-law, did you?" Bai Muo glanced at him sideways and said, "In your eyes, am I such an unreasonable person?" "Ah." Bai Muo said, "The third brother is free to decide who he likes, and it is not up to me to decide who he gets engaged to. Why should I have trouble with my sister-in-law? What's more, she didn't like Qi Jinkai in the first place. Because Li Ju said she should pretend not to know her, so Bai Muo had no choice but to call her sister-in-law like Lu Qingran and the others." Lu Qingran clicked her tongue twice and said with emotion, "Look at your ideological consciousness. All the ladies in the imperial capital who like the third brother should really listen to it. This is the demeanor that an admirer should have." Hearing the word admirer, Bai Yuxiu's brows furrowed slightly, and there seemed to be dissatisfaction flashing across his eyes. He said, "Xiao Yu, since the third brother has a sister-in-law, you should stop thinking about him." Hearing his suspiciously jealous words, Bai Muo raised his eyebrows, a bad light flashed in his eyes, and said, "Although the third brother has a fiancée, this does not conflict with my liking for him." Bai Yuxiu frowned, "But there will be no results if you do this." Bai Muo, "I don't want the results, just the feeling of liking is enough." Bai Yuxiu frowned even more tightly, which could kill a mosquito. Seeing his entangled and sad look, Lu Qingran comforted him, "Okay, Lao Bai, don't force Xiao Yu. She has liked third brother for so many years and can't let go for a while, so don't remind her again and again the fact of falling out of love." Bai Yuxiu frowned, feeling that what Lu Qingran said made sense. Okay, Xiao, think about it yourself. Lu Qingran put her arm on Bai Yuxiu's shoulder and said to Bai Muyu with a smile, what kind of grass do we, the eldest lady of Fenghua Entertainment, want? Why hang yourself on the same tree as my third brother? His tone was caring like an old father. I fully understand the hearts of you lovelorn girls. On the surface, you pretend not to care, but in fact, your hearts are broken. Listen to me, it's okay. Just go back and hide in bed and cry for a while. Finally, Lu Qingran patted Bai Muyu on the shoulder and comforted, time can heal all wounds. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 134. Chapter 134 Let me go. Lu Qingran didn't notice the obviously wrong expression on Bai Muyu's face at this time. A lovelorn girl? Hide under the covers and cry? How can time smooth everything out? Go to and smooth everything. She has never liked Qi Jinkai at all, she is so in love with your sister. What I said about Zhou just now was just to tease Bai Yuxiu. What kind of emotional expert is he rushing to do? Made it as if she had been in love with Qi Jinkai for many years. A chilling light flashed across Bai Muyu's eyes, and a smile emerged from the corner of his mouth. Very good, Lu Qingran, you asked for this. The other side. Li Ju, who was sitting on Qi Jinkai's car, received an audio message. Li Ju frowned in confusion. What is this? Good stuff, you'll understand it once you hear it. Li Ju raised his eyebrows, took out his headphones, and clicked on the audio. A few seconds later, a heart-stopping smile appeared on Li Ju's lips, and the air pressure around him continued to decrease. Jing Yi, who was driving in front, couldn't help but shudder. Li Ju smiled, but the strength of his hand gradually deepened. Hold the phone screen with both hands, the finger bones turned white, and gently broke it. Clear cracking sounds resounded in the carriage. Qi Jinkai raised his light gray eyes and looked at her. Jing Er immediately raised his head and looked through the rear view mirror at the rear row. The phone screen has been shattered into glass shards, lying pitifully in Li Ju's hand. Qi Jinkai lowered his eyes following the voice. Why is my back suddenly feeling a little cold? Li Ju smiled and said nonchalantly, it's okay. Just relax your fingers. This phone is too weak. Qi Jinkai looked at her with deep eyes for a while, then looked away. Scene 2. Relaxed his fingers and took out a mobile phone. People who don't know look at this posture and think you are going to hit someone. Li Ju ignored Jing Er's complicated expression and lowered his head to look at the remains of the mobile phone in his hand. Grinding my teeth secretly in my heart. Lu Qingran, right? I remember you. Lu Qingran, who was complacent because he thought he had successfully comforted the lovelorn Bai Muyu, sneezed suddenly. He touched his nose. Who was thinking about him? Li Ju cleaned up the debris in his hands and thought about how to make Lu Qingran understand the art of speaking. She looked sideways and asked, Third Master, is Lu Qingran your friend? Qi Jinkai, not familiar with it? Li Ju chuckled in his heart. There is a third brother next to you, you tell me you are not familiar with me? What about the liar? Qi Jinkai saw that she suddenly asked about Lu Qingran, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Why did you suddenly ask about him? She and Lu Qingran have also met many times. I have never seen her interested in him before. Why did you mention him all of a sudden? Li Ju said, I have a friend who happens to be a medical student, and I just want to exchange experiences with the famous Dr. Lu. Well, literally communicating. Qi Jinkai understood clearly, but then raised his eyebrows and said playfully, Lu Qingran's temperament has always been out of tune, and he hates this kind of academic exchanges. Last time, he even locked himself in the laboratory for more than a month in order not to attend an exchange meeting abroad. Li Ju said lightly, "Oh, that's it? That's a pity." Ji Yunchu was bored and developed a drug to tease people. Just one pill can make you enjoy the feeling of death from constipation. Although the effect is very disappointing, the effect is immediate. Otherwise, she would like to see if Dr. Lu, who has superb medical skills, can compete with the ghost doctor. Qi Jinkai said, "You seem a little disappointed." Li Ju smiled, turned his head and looked out the window, and said, "You heard wrong." Qi Jinkai frowned, feeling that her tone just now was strange. "But I can't tell where it is." "Put me down, put me down." The underground parking lot echoed with someone's roar. Those who didn't know thought this was some kind of kidnapping scene. Chi Saijin looked at Chi Maoyi, who was fluttering back and forth in her arms with a black line on her face. At this time, she was holding his neck with one hand and pulling him down. She was kicking her legs randomly, one of her high heels was kicked off, and her hair was messy and stuck to her face, like a mad woman. "Be honest with me." Chi Saijin tightened his arms around her, and his steps couldn't help but move a little faster. Just kidding, if he didn't get her into the car, others would really think he was kidnapping. After finally putting her into the car, Chi Saijin wiped the sweat from his forehead. This girl is really capable of doing things. "Ah, Ajiu, drink, keep drinking," Chi Maoyi murmured. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 135. Chapter 135. There is nothing I can do. Chi Saijin twitched the corners of his mouth and closed the car door. Turning the air conditioner to warm, he put his coat on Chi Maoyi. Gradually, she fell asleep. He didn't wake up until he reached the old house. He had no choice but to pick her up again. "Ah, why are you drinking like this?" MRSG opened the door and was surprised to see Chi Maoyi so drunk. "Grandma, she didn't pay attention to the alcohol content today and accidentally drank too much," Chi Saijin said. Seeing him holding someone in his arms, MRSG quickly got out of the way and said, come in, I'll make some sobering soup for her." Speaking, he went to the kitchen. Chi Saijin carried Chi Maoyi all the way back to the bedroom, put her on the bed, covered her with the quilt, and left. He ran into Mr. Chi head-on. He was wearing dark gray pajamas and slippers. Apparently he heard the noise and came out to take a look. "Grandpa," Chi Saijin called. Mr. Chi nodded, looked at him, frowned, and said, "What do you look like? What's going on with your hair and eyes?" Chi Saijin was stunned for a moment, and then realized that he was talking about his long hair and light blue eyes. MRSG often has video calls with him and is used to his current appearance. In contrast, Mr. Chi was naturally very surprised. "Grandpa, how are you? Have I changed a lot?" Mr. Chi snorted coldly, "No matter how great the change is, he is still the same cry-loving kid back then." Chi Saijin froze. "Grandpa, how long has it been? Let's not talk about old things, okay? How is Weiwei?" Mr. Chi glanced at Chi Maoyi's bedroom and asked. "It's okay, I'm just drunk." Mr. Chi frowned, "Don't take your little aunt out to fool around in the future. She is a girl, and it is not good for her to get drunk outside." Chi Saijin felt very innocent. "Grandpa, she obviously forced me to go." "You still dare to say that? Then the Jingfeng banquet is not because of you." Chi Saijin shrank his neck. "As for his grandfather, if you can, don't contradict him. Otherwise, you will still be the one who suffers." "I got it, Grandpa." At this moment, MRSG went upstairs with a bowl of soup. When she looked up, she saw her grandfather and grandson blocking the stairs. She frowned and said, "What are you doing here if you don't want to sleep?" I woke up, come out and take a look. Mr. Chi turned sideways and made way for her. Madam Chi turned to Chi Sijin and said, Ajin, it's so late, go back quickly. Okay, Grandma, take good care of Weiwei. Well, don't worry. Seeing Chi Sijin leaving, MRSG just looked away, gently opened the door, and walked to Chi Mao Yi's bed. Seeing that she was already asleep, he put the sobering soup aside and carefully tucked her into bed. The door was opened a crack, and the light from outside came through. Mr. Chi walked in quietly. He looked at MRSG and was about to open her lips to speak, but the latter immediately made a silent gesture. Mr. Chi nodded, and the two of them exited the bedroom and closed the door. This child's temper is really. MRSG closed the door and sighed softly. Her temperament, after all, is not the result of your pampering, Mr. Chi said. I'm happy to do it. Do you have any objections? MRSG glanced at him. I don't dare. I admire Madam's education methods. None of these three children are crooked. Mr. Chi flattered him seriously, with a flattering look on his face. Stop complimenting me. Where there is. MRSG glanced at Mr. Chi and said, I won't tell you any more. It's so late, I'm going to bed. Just after turning around and walking a few steps, I found that the person behind me had been following me. What are you doing? Mr. Chi smiled and said, well, Hanking, can I go back to my room and sleep? MRSG immediately denied it, no, we will wait until you get rid of the problem of talking in your sleep. Recently, he suddenly started talking in his sleep for some reason. It was so noisy that she couldn't sleep all night long. For the quality of her sleep, she had no choice but to force him to sleep in the study room. Mr. Chi suddenly frowned like a child, but I can't sleep without you. I saw you slept well just now. But I was woken up by that Bratagen. Oh, then there's nothing I can do. MRSG walked into the bedroom and closed the door with a bang. He was ruthlessly blocked from the door. Mr. Chi's face turned dark instantly. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 136. Chapter 136. I want you to investigate. The next day, Li Ju received a brand new mobile phone. There was also a message on the courier, the newly developed style is strong and resistant to falling. Boss, please take your time and use it. Li Ju. Isn't it just a mobile phone? Why does it look like a new type of weapon? Boss, Lin Yan has made new moves. Just a few seconds after turning on the phone, the chat message popped up. Huh. In the light of the incident, he gradually turned the wind towards the third master. Li Ju squinted her eyes. She had expected this situation a long time ago. In other words, Lin Yan's actions confirmed her previous thoughts. Don't act rashly yet, just let him go. But what if I can't control it? Don't worry, it's okay. Li Ju lowered his eyes, with an unclear look in his eyes, silently thinking about something in his heart. Suddenly, she took out her mobile phone. Lao Lu, come out for a moment. Hello, miss, the waiter asked with a smile on his face. This is a famous time-honored store in Daijing. Business is very hot and lively during the day. Baimwiu pushed up her sunglasses and lowered the brim of her hat to prevent others from recognizing her face, and whispered, where is box 302? Upstairs, please follow me. Baimwiu followed the waiter upstairs. As soon as he opened the door of the private room, he saw Li Ju sitting there, playing with his mobile phone. She closed the door, took off her hat and eyes, exhaled a breath, and said resentfully, Boss, why did you choose such a place? What if I am recognized? Li Ju raised his eyes, looked at the armed Baimwiu, and said, run away if you recognize him. Baimwiu rolled his eyes and sat down. You are really good at making sarcastic remarks. Will I be able to run away then? Li Ju glanced at her lightly. If you can't even escape, then your training is still too little. Bai Mui's face stiffened. She smiled bitterly and changed the subject. Why do you have time to have dinner with me today? Li Ju picked up the teapot at hand and poured himself a cup of tea. White mist rises and the fragrance of tea overflows. He took a sip and cleared his throat. He didn't say his purpose. He just asked, the private cuisine here is good, is there anything you want to eat? Bai Mui picked up the menu and ordered a few dishes. The food came out very quickly, it didn't take long. Bai Mui was indeed hungry, so he picked up his chopsticks and started eating. While eating, he raised his head and asked Li Ju, "Boss, what do you want from me?" Li Ju said, "I heard that you are going to Angkor to film a movie recently." Bai Mui was stunned for a moment, nodded, then smiled, raised an eyebrow at Li Ju, and said, "You are so familiar with my schedule, boss, aren't you a fan of mine?" Li Ju's expression remained unchanged as he said, "I asked the mistress." The smile on Bai Mui's face froze, and he curled his lips, feeling a little unhappy. What? She thought Li Ju was really her fan. Bai Mui sighed. Sure enough, he still couldn't think too much. She lowered her head and took a bite of the ribs, and said, "Sister, he recently picked a script for me. I thought it was pretty good, so I accepted it. I will join the team in a few days, and the filming location will be in Angkor." Li Ju hummed and said, "I heard that one of the investors in your crew is a man named Lin Yan." After finishing speaking, Bai Mui frowned slightly. Li Ju has never been interested in things in the entertainment industry. Even if it was about what movie she wanted to film or what award she would win, she never asked about it. "How come you know so much this time?" Bai Mui put down his chopsticks and asked in confusion, "Boss, what happened?" Li Ju looked up at her and said, "You know what happened on the internet a few days ago, right?" Bai Mui's mouth twitched. Is there anyone who doesn't know now? The news of her engagement to Qi Jinkai spread throughout the empire in just a few moments. Qi Jinkai is the man that women in the empire most want to sleep with. That's how she labeled it. Tisk tisk. Bai Mui suppressed a smile. Did you know that there are people on the internet who are going to jump off the building because they can't think about the engagement between you and the third brother? Li Ju's eyes twitched. That's not what I meant. Ah. Li Ju told what happened before. Bai Mui frowned. So, there is something wrong with this Lin Yan. Bai Mui frowned even more. That Lin Yan doesn't know you, how could he? Li Ju, so I want you to investigate this Lin Yan. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 137. Chapter 137. I apologized. This Lin Yan is an investor in your crew. It is easier for you to get close to him, Li Ju said. Bai Mui nodded, okay, I understand. After saying that, she put down her chopsticks, took out a tissue and wiped her hands, then stood up and prepared to leave. Wait a moment. Bai Mui paused for a moment. Li Ju raised her hand, and a ray of silver light flew towards her. Bai Mui reached out and took it, opening his palm. There was a silver ring. It is covered with dark lines, and there is also a 6 engraved on the inside. Bai Mui raised his eyebrows. This. Isn't it sent to be improved? Lao Si added Lao Chi's new poison to it. Bai Mui pinched the silver ring and felt a little funny. No need, boss, I'm just investigating an ordinary person, there's no need. In case. Bai Mui curled his lips and said, okay. She put the silver ring on her index finger, picked up the hat and sunglasses beside her, and said, let's go. After Bai Mui left, Li Ju propped up his chin and took out another silver ring from his pocket that was exactly the same as the one just now. It's just that 9 is engraved on the inside of this one. Li Ju carefully stroked the silver ring, tapped her fingers, and pressed a button somewhere. Yan Hong's lips came closer, she opened them gently, and said, "Inform the people in the third group and ask them to go with Lao Lu." "Captain, is it possible that sixth sister can't handle that Lin Yan alone?" The silver ring vibrated slightly, and an unfamiliar male voice came out. "Li Ju, what I mean is that when Lao Lu investigates Lin Yan, you look for new clues. She always felt that there was something deeper hidden behind this. I'll make arrangements right away once I know the captain." Li Ju turned off the call, stood up and left. While walking down the stairs, someone suddenly hit me on the back. Li Ju frowned, impatience flashed in his eyes, and turned around. "Sorry." The girl who bumped into her apologized quickly, but while she said she was sorry, there was no apology in her eyes. She raised her head and glanced at Li Ju. The next second, her eyes widened in surprise and said, You are, Li Ju." She took a step closer to confirm. A strong smell of perfume hit his face. Li Ju frowned and stepped back half a minute. "It's really you." The girl turned around and shouted, "Arong, come quickly. Look who this is." While shouting, he wanted to pull Li Ju's sleeves to prevent her from leaving, but Li Ju calmly avoided her. "Who is this?" Li Ju couldn't stand the strong and pungent smell of perfume, so she started to leave. However, the girl took the lead and blocked her way. Li Ju's eyes turned cold completely, and she said, "Get out of the way." But the girl turned a deaf ear and kept winking behind her. "Arong, look quickly, is this the third master's fiancé? Ming Ming, don't mess around." There were gentle footsteps behind him, followed by a soft female voice. Li Ju looked sideways, and saw that the girl was extremely slender, her skin color was almost transparent white, and her face looked sickly. Nevertheless, her features are still very beautiful. The girl named Ming Ming's eyes lit up, she ran over and hugged Yun Rong's arm, saying, "Arong, is she right?" Yun Rong patted her hand on his arm, glanced at her, and said, "Ming Ming, why are you stopping me? How rude." Len Ming curled his lips. Yun Rong looked at Li Ju with apologetic eyes and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Li, Ming Ming didn't bump into you on purpose. Are you okay?" Li Ju raised her eyebrows. "Does this person know her? All of this is really thanks to Qi Jinkai. Otherwise, she would not be so high profile. Miss Li." Yun Rong saw her lowering her head and didn't know what she was thinking. She said softly, "Miss Li, I'm really sorry." "Arong, I've already apologized," Len Ming said. "Not sincere, apologize again." Yun Rong turned to her and said. Len Ming bit her lip and turned her head to the side, refusing to do as she asked. "You dash." Yun Rong was about to say a few words to her, but Li Ju suddenly said, "No need." Yun Rong looked at her in surprise, but Li Ju just glanced at the two of them lightly and said, "You have to use your eyes." The implication is that Len Ming does not have eyes. "Sorry, I've been too busy these days, plus Kevin, so there's only one update today." End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 138. Chapter 138. Whatever you think. Yun Rong paused with a smile on his face, a little embarrassed, and said, "Why don't I treat Miss Li to a meal to apologize?" "Arong." Len Ming tugged on her sleeve in private and frowned slightly. She had already apologized. Why would Arong invite her to dinner again? "No, we're not familiar with it." Li Ju turned around and left. "Who is it?" Len Ming snorted at Li Ju's back. "Arong invited her to dinner to give her face, but she was so ungrateful." "Ming Ming, didn't you hit me just now?" Len Ming smiled and said, No, I just stopped in time. Immediately afterwards, she pursed her lips again and said, I just didn't expect to bump into that Li Ju. Yunrong raised his eyebrows, do you know her? Lenming is not often in the imperial capital, and she usually doesn't care about the imperial capital circle. She didn't expect that she would actually know about Li Ju. Can I not recognize her? She is the third master's fiancée. Lenming deliberately emphasized the last three words, which made him look particularly sinister. TCH. What's the big deal? Isn't it because Mr. Li likes her? Lenming rolled his eyes. Yunrong frowned and whispered, Mingming, don't say that. Upon hearing this, Lenming immediately raised her voice, why can't you say it? Isn't this something everyone in imperial capital knows? She looked at the direction Li Ju was leaving with contempt in her eyes, why are you pulling, and you actually said I don't have eyes. Mingming, Yunrong interrupted her sharply. Then he said helplessly, it's not the Leng family or the Yun family outside, so we can let you do whatever you want. What if Li Ju pursued you just now? Lenming disapproved and snorted, I don't think she can do anything about me. Wrong, don't make such a fuss. You ahem. Yunrong's eyes widened slightly. Just as he was about to say something, he coughed. Lenming's face changed slightly, and he immediately stepped forward and patted her on the back, saying, okay, I was wrong, don't get excited. Yunrong took a few deep breaths and stopped coughing. Lenming helped her downstairs while carefully observing her expression, Arong, are you okay? Yunrong, it's okay. I've been having this problem for a long time. Just cough a few times and it'll be fine. I'm not talking about this, Arong. Aren't you angry that Li Ju became the third master's fiancée before you? Yunrong paused and her eyes darkened. She turned back to stare at Lenming and asked in a serious tone, Mingming, where did you hear these words? Lenming lowered his head and felt a little guilty, I overheard the conversation between aunt and uncle and found out. Lenming. As soon as Lenming heard her calling him by his full name, he knew that she was really angry and said quickly, I'm sorry. Arong, I won't dare next time. Mingming Yunrong's tone was full of helplessness, it was my mother's own decision to let me and the third master go on a blind date. In fact, he and I have never even met, how could it be like what you said? But, I heard from my aunt that you like the third master very much. Yunrong's face stiffened for a moment, but soon returned to its original state. She said, that was all in the past. Now the third master has a fiancée. But the third master doesn't like that Li Ju at all, Lenming said firmly. Yunrong asked, how do you know? Lenming hummed, I have never heard that third master said an ambiguous word to Li Ju in public. Only this. Of course not. Lenming came closer and whispered, my dad said that the engagement between the third master and Li Ju was entirely brought about by the two old men. The third master was not asked for his opinion at all. She winked at Yunrong, so, Arong, you still have a chance. Yunrong smiled and said, Mingming, you can't just take everything at face value. Lenming was confused, huh? Although it was indeed two old men who proposed the engagement, who is the third master? If he doesn't want to, can someone force him? I heard that MRSG arranged many blind dates for the third master before, but he didn't go to any of them. It's enough to show that he still cares about Li Ju. Yunrong lowered his head, a moment of loneliness flashed in his eyes. Lenming said, how can there be any sincerity in the marriage between two big families? I think the third master just fell in love with the Li family, so he acquiesced to this marriage contract. Yunrong shook his head and sighed, that's it, whatever you think. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 139. Chapter 139 I don't want to involve her. Suddenly, Yun Rong's face changed slightly, and then he ran out quickly, holding onto the corner, and kept coughing. Leng Ming hurriedly caught up with her and saw that her face was red from coughing, and there was a hint of distress in her eyes. She and Yun Rong grew up together since childhood and are best friends that no one can replace. Yun Rong has congenital heart disease and is weak. The doctor said that if a suitable heart cannot be found, she will most likely not live to be 30. Because of her illness, Yun Rong had almost no chance to go out. At home, even if she went to the bathroom, a large number of people would follow her, for fear that something would happen to her. This time, she finally found an excuse to take Yun Rong out to relax. However, not long after he came out, Yun Rong could no longer hold on. Leng Ming looked worried and said, "Rong, let's go back." Yun Rong smiled bitterly, "I didn't expect that I couldn't even hold on for such a short time." Rong. Leng Ming's throat felt a little sore and she pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. Fate is really unfair, why should Rong have to suffer so much? Ming, tell me, do I really have a short time to live? Hearing this, Leng Ming immediately became anxious. Rong. Don't say such depressing words, Uncle Yun will definitely find a suitable heart and cure you. Yun Rong straightened up, raised his head slightly, his eyes darkened, and said, "But, I don't know if I can wait until that time." After all, after more than 10 years of searching, there was no result. Rong, we will definitely find it. Leng Ming's tone was firm, with a tone that could not be criticized. Yun Rong has suffered too much and must not continue like this. She must do everything possible to cure her. Leng Ming's eyes were shining with determination, and a plan in his heart gradually took shape. If it is not convenient for the Yun family to do something, then let her do it. Why did you call me here? Li Ju sat on the desk with one leg dangling and asked Qi Jingkai, who was reading the document. Qi Jing said without raising his head, "My old man called me and asked me to take you back for dinner tonight." Li Ju raised his eyebrows, "I thought this engagement was just a show." Qi Jingkai's fingers holding the pen paused slightly. After a long while, he said, "How can it be a show if it was decided by the two old men themselves?" Li Ju jumped down from the table and came to Qi Jingkai. He put his hands on his desk and looked directly at him with an unclear expression. "So, the engagement is real." Qi Jingkai put down his pen, met her gaze, and made a sound from his throat. Are we really an unmarried couple?" "Yes. Isn't there something else hidden in this?" Hearing her last question, Qi Jing said, "You are thinking too much." Li Ju stared straight at Qi Jingkai, his eyes gradually getting darker, but the latter didn't show any clues from beginning to end. Suddenly, she stood up straight and looked at him condescendingly, the corners of her lips curled up in a playful smile. "You think I'm a fool?" It is obvious that the two old men teamed up to hide this from her. Seeing her look like she had already guessed, Qi Jingkai's lips twitched slightly, and something strange flashed in his eyes. He knew he couldn't hide it. Although, he didn't want to hide it. He said, "Since you know everything, why do you come to ask me? It's simply unnecessary." Li Ju crossed his arms across his chest, chuckled, and leaned on his table without any formality, saying, "To be honest, I really don't understand why the old man chose me. Obviously, you can find someone else." Qi Jingkai raised his eyes and looked at her, "Because you have the shortest time in the imperial capital and the least involvement." Li Ju naturally picked up the conversation, "That's why it's easiest to attract those people, right?" Qi Jing said nothing, and she took it as her acquiescence. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. Qi Jingkai didn't have much reaction when he saw Li Ju's expression, and there was a moment of surprise in his eyes. "Aren't you angry?" "What are you angry about?" "Your grandpa kept it secret from you," Qi Jing said. He thought she would be very angry when she found out about it. Because according to her temper, What she hates the most is someone lying to her. What should I be angry about? Li Ju chuckled. Grandpa did this because he didn't want to get me involved. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 140. Chapter 140. Let's cooperate. After saying that, Li Ju shook his head and smiled. No, I'm already involved. Qi Jinkai held the pen in his hand, turned it gently, and said, the old man wants me to protect you. Li Ju raised his eyebrows. Oh. Qi Jinkai added, but I don't think it's necessary at all. With Li Ju's skills, it's others who should worry. Li Ju chuckled, then I really appreciate your trust in me. Qi Jinkai, you're welcome. After all, I have experienced it myself. It is natural to trust her strength. Li Ju rolled his eyes and said, speaking of which, these two old men are really tolerant, after all these years. Qi Jinkai lowered his head and scanned the contents of the document and said, I didn't want to break up with each other before. But they have gone too far in recent years. In the final analysis, it is still the desires of the human heart. Li Ju sneered, what can the two old men do if they don't want to quarrel? Those people don't care at all. There is no shortage of things that should not be done. Qi Jinkai raised his eyebrows and looked at her in surprise. You checked quite clearly. It's not like I have a bunch of trash under my command. Qi Jinkai always had a question when talking about this. Why did you come to the imperial capital? Let's live a relaxed and free life, and come to the imperial capital to be an illegitimate daughter. If you didn't know this, you'd think you were a lunatic. Li Ju thought for 2 seconds and casually made up a reason, recognize the relative. There's nothing wrong with it. But Qi Jinkai smiled, do you think I will believe it? Li Ju also replied, then you think I will tell you. That is naturally impossible. For people like them, having someone see through their disguise once is ridiculous enough. How could you take the initiative to hand over your details? Li Ju knew it very well. Even though her relationship with Qi Jinkai is pretty good now, they are still an unmarried couple on the surface. But who knows how many times they will have conflicts of interest behind their backs. You still have to keep an eye out for uncertainties. Qi Jinkai was not surprised by her vigilance, because he was the same. Just asking, forget it if you don't say it, he said. Third uncle, actually we can cooperate sometimes, Li Ju suddenly said. Oh. Qi Jinkai was very sensitive to Li Ju's name for him. Normally when she calls him third uncle, it's never good. For example, with my current status in the imperial capital, it is inconvenient to do certain things, so. Qi Jinkai interrupted her, so you want me to cover for you? Li Ju nodded. After all, he is still her fiancé, so it is easy to hide something from her. However, Qi Jinkai did not agree immediately, but asked, then I helped you, how can you help me? Li Ju's lips curled up slightly, you cover up for me, and I'll help you investigate things over there in S State. Qi Jinkai was startled, raised his head, and looked into her meaningful eyes. Your intelligence network is really wide? Li Ju waved his hand, not really, your incident is big news. It's hard to even think about it. Qi Jinkai narrowed his eyes slightly. Li Ju's power in S continent could indeed help him. That being the case. Okay, deal. Li Ju raised the corners of his mouth slightly, then, I wish you a happy cooperation. Qi Jinkai raised his eyebrows and continued working with his head down. The atmosphere became quiet again. In the huge office, one could only hear the sound of documents being turned over from time to time. It's still an hour before I get off work. In other words, she had to wait for Qi Jinkai for another hour. Li Ju was a little irritable. She sat aside and looked at Chi Jinkai boredly. The man was wearing a retro-style suit today, and his shirt was neatly buttoned to the last button. It adds a bit of elegance to the already ascetic and cold face. Don't mention it, this man's looks are really beyond her appreciation of appearance. For a moment, she was stunned. But Li Ju is Li Ju after all. Soon he struggled out of Chi Jinkai's grand appearance. She looked away and looked around the rest of the office. But I found that there was nothing interesting at all, and the layout was very cold and concise. Li Ju was so bored that she stood up and walked straight to the sofa. He took off his loose coat and covered himself, then lay down on a small sofa, closed his eyes, and squinted to sleep. You do your work and I sleep on mine. Perfect. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 141. Chapter 141. It's time to change your tune. An hour later, Chi Jinkai flexed his wrist. He raised his head and glanced at the watch on the wall, and the next second his eyes fell on Li Ju, who was sleeping soundly on the sofa. Because the sofa was too narrow, she could only lie sideways with her back arched, but she slept soundly. It was also time to get off work. Chi Jinkai stood up, took the coat on the side with his long arms, and walked to Li Ju. Perhaps sensing that the light was blocked, Li Ju's dark eyelashes trembled and he slowly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he met a pair of light gray eyes. Li Ju was stunned for a moment and yawned. Have you finished reading the document? Chi Jinkai was a little angry. She earns an SR salary but does no work at all day long. Looks like I'm on vacation. He was now a little confused as to why he asked her to be his secretary in the first place. Let me remind you, you are my secretary, can you do some work that a secretary should do? Li Ju blinked, no, I can't do it. Chi Jinkai choked. Li Ju sat up from the sofa and put her coat on her body. Because he had just woken up, his hair was a little messy, and there were faint red marks on the side of his face. The collar of his sweatshirt was tilted, revealing a touch of fair skin. There is no image at all. However, the person involved didn't notice it. She said, didn't you say you want to go back to your old house for dinner? Let's go. After saying that, she stood up and walked out. Chi Jinkai stood still. Li Ju turned around and asked doubtfully, let's go. Chi Jinkai stretched out his finger, pointed at her hair, and said, you'd better tidy it up first. Li Ju was stunned for a moment, then reacted and twitched the corner of his mouth. Wait for me for 5 minutes. It was said to be 5 minutes, and it really was 5 minutes. Li Ju straightened her hair and went to the bathroom to wash her face with cold water. The whole set of movements is smooth and smooth. She walked to Chi Jinkai and stood in front of him, saying, okay, let's go. Chi Jinkai looked at her. She has a bare face and her hair is scattered casually behind her back. There is no modification at all, but she is still stunning. The charming peach blossom eyes are clear and smooth, the skin color is snow white, and the facial features without makeup are particularly delicate. The whole body has a restrained temperament, giving people a sense of indifference. But everyone who knows her knows that it is just her disguise. Peeling off this layer of disguise, what is hidden underneath is a frightening danger. Normally, it is like a beast that puts away its claws and takes a nap, just to relax the enemy's vigilance and wait for a fatal blow. I really don't know what she went through. Chi Jinkai recovered his thoughts and said to Li Ju, let's go. Li Ju came to Chi's house for the first time, but this time, it was slightly different from before. The living room was crowded with people. As soon as Li Ju entered the door, she felt several eyes falling on her. Li Ju's lips twitched. Why did she feel like she was being treated as a rare animal? Chi Jinkai called out, Dad, Mom, second brother, second sister-in-law. Chi Jingyuan was sitting on the sofa, holding a book in his hand. After hearing this, he raised his head, pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and sighed. He turned to Li Ju and looked at her with scrutiny. Li Ju raised his eyebrows. Third brother, you have chosen a good wife. Li Ju choked. Daughter-in-law. Zhao Yulan sat next to him and echoed with a smile, that's right, third brother, you really did something reliable this time. Having decided on one's lifelong affairs. Second sister-in-law, wasn't I trustworthy before? Qi Jingkai asked. Well. Qi Jingyuan snorted, you have no idea whether it's reliable or not. Qi Jingkai. Zhao Yulan pinched Qi Jingyuan's arm and asked, why are you talking? Qi Jingyuan. Come, this familiar partiality. Qi Jingyuan looked at his wife with resentment. Qi Jingkai is the youngest in the family and is about the same age as their son. Normally, she likes to pamper Qi Jingkai as a junior. Can't even say a word to him. This partiality of mind is simply boundless. MRSG walked out of the kitchen carrying a plate of fruit. When she saw Li Ju, her eyes suddenly lit up. Xiaju, you're here. She turned to Qi Jingkai and said in a deep voice, third brother, even the second brother and the others are here, why are you here? Qi Jingyuan frowned, Mom, what does even we are here mean? Are they usually late? MRSG glanced at him coldly. Qi Jingyuan. Well, I am usually quite busy. End of this chapter.